Yes, it is policy discuss right now, and we will be talking about bullying in schools. So, bullying in schools has been an age-long nemesis, if you like call it that. Nemesis because it is seen as something that starts and then it grows, comes back to the person who could have made a change or who trained the bully. So, it's an age-long nemesis that many people have survived. But the torment never actually leaves. A child is the bully and a child is the bullied. So both the victim and the perpetrator, they are all children. In cases where you have bullying in schools, mostly. That is not to say that bullying is restricted to children. You have adults bullying adults. But today we're going to look at children bullying other children. So attention and support can be given to the child. So how can the society prevent bullying and help both the bully and the bullied? The federal government, through the Ministry of Education, has taken some steps to curtail the incidence of bullying in schools. So the Federal Ministry of Education on Tuesday announced that it has established a 7-member committee to address bullying in all Nigerian schools, reinforcing its commitment to student welfare and a safe learning environment. The committee will be mandated to review reported cases and ensure swift action, complementing the 21-member team working on a national policy on anti-bullying. To facilitate confidential reporting, the government has introduced a hotline 0901-266-0044. That's the hotline. Or an email antibullying@education.gov.ng and a WhatsApp number which is 0805-253-6133. to report such cases. As the conversation goes on, this information will be on the scroll bar, so you can just get it in if you're a parent, you're a guardian, or even a school teacher, and you want to be able to report any incident of bullying in your school. But let's look at what we said bullying is. It's an age-long nemesis. Now, we call it that because, or I call it that because, if you look at where these children come from, many of them come from homes, whether they have their parents there or their guardian, but there is an adult watching over them before they leave for school. And when they get to the school, they have teachers. There is a school authority that is put there to ensure that they are well behaved. But somehow, we find that there are cases of bullying. Sadly, in some cases, that's led to the death of the bullied. So this is a very serious matter. We have Bright Kemasuode, who is an alumni of Parents Engagement Lead and African Leadership University, African Leadership College of Higher Education. He joins virtually and is our guest today. Good morning, Bright Kemasuode.
Hi. Good morning. Good to be here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Good morning.
Okay, so I'm sure you heard what I was saying, that bullying is an age-long nemesis. Do you agree with that? What would you define bullying as?
For me, really, it's the word age-long nemesis is something that's been there. Honestly, I was bullied in school while I was in secondary school. I went to a boarding school, and that's something that's been in existence long before now. But not to follow up on all of these various interviews we can definitely get on Google or, of course, other learning materials. For me, I would love to say that bully is anything that we do to someone to make them uncomfortable, right? It could go whichever way. It could be from somebody older to someone younger, or even someone younger to someone older. It doesn't really mean. But the fact that you're doing something that takes away that person's confidence, that takes away the person's well-being, that can be termed bullying.
About bullying in schools, and the Federal Ministry of Education's approach to it is to create a hotline through which these cases can be reported. What do you think should happen? Does it start and end with reporting? Should we take it back to where these children are coming from?
Great question, right? Great question. I would first of all thank you. I would first of all say thank you to the Federal Ministry of Education for even thinking about doing this in the first place. Really, I think there's interference. This is something that should have been done a long time ago. But like your question says, long ago, this thing has been existing and nothing has been done. And the truth is, while the Federal Ministry of Education would have put in some structures around this in terms of reporting, it's not just about reporting. Reporting is one of the majors. I mean, I've worked across different levels of the academic sector. I've worked in low-cost private schools, public schools in low-income communities, international secondary school, and currently I'm working in higher education. And the question that comes to mind is, how do all of these different schools, right, in their different contexts, utilize the structure that the Federal Ministry of Education has put in? We still have our challenges around technology. I've worked in schools where there are no mobile phones in those communities. I mean, if you turn on a Zoom call in your classroom, you have all of the school students running to you as though they are just saying something magical for the first time in their life. Bullying happens in those communities as well. So how do they fit into this situation? It's something that, I mean, the Ministry of Education needs to also look at and see how we can trickle it down to education systems that are also across those communities that might not really have, of course, quality internet services, as well as technology know-how, right? But the truth is, beyond all of these structures that the Federal Ministry of Education has put in place, something I would love to share is the fact that it's also very, very important for us to take this back to the basics where it begins from. The place of the home, right? What are we doing as parents? For the bully, who your child has been bullied, what are you putting in structure to ensure that your child is that person that speaks up when this happens, and then you know how to actually help this child, right? Because of course it does have its negative impact. And again, for the child who is a bully, what are the structures that are being put in place as parents? For instance, I'm a parent and then I know that my child is a bully. A couple of concerns, a couple of complaints have come in from school saying that XYZ child has always bullied his or her classmates. What am I putting in place as well to ensure that my child, right, does not live out to become somebody who takes these traits even onwards? So again, we go back to something that is the family structure. What are parents really doing? What are we putting in place? How are we teaching our children the negative impact of these things that they do, right? So while we would say, yes, there is some structure that needs to be in place from the Ministry of Education, like you said, reporting is one of it. I'm saying that technology is also a struggle we have in this country, but we need to also put all of these structures. Something that comes to mind that I think we can do in this as well is integrating people into understanding what bullying can lead to, what it can cause, what are the dangers around it, right? And that goes around doing some very basic things that might not even be too expensive. What about engagement in communities, community engagement, right? What about looking at structures where teachers from time to time have engagements with their parents during PTA meetings to teach them how they can even identify that their kids are bullies, right? There are these things that you can identify. These traits are not just there. It's not your child speaking out, right? There's a difference when your child is speaking out and when your child is a bully. So how do we balance all of this is a concern that comes to mind as we're saying, well done to the Federal Ministry of Education, and there's still a lot that has to be done.
Thank you, Bright, for those very insightful early comments. We seem to also live in a culture of silence where people really see things bad and they don't want to talk about it. That's one side. And there's also a culture in some of these secondary schools where it is taken as normal. And those who are bullied are threatened not to even report these things, and they are afraid to report, because I had my children in public schools and nobody ever told me one day they were bullied, but they actually were bullied. Their provisions were taken from them, and these things are not done in the open. They are done in the darkness of the night, or sometimes at the back of the hostels where nobody is watching, and the person is warned. Do you think that just putting lines in place is enough remedy, or there needs to be a way to monitor what is happening in the school real time so that people can control these various acts?
Thank you very much. Right, that's a very great question. I really think that beyond just the structure of core lines, like I've said earlier on, there has to be some deep integrations. And this is what happens, right? I was bullied in school, and up until today, my parents did not know I was bullied. Like, I fought for myself in school. I needed to survive being bullied, and then I moved on, right? And then there's the culture of the consciousness of when, especially for those who have gone through boarding school, when you're in junior days, you look forward to being a senior so that you can also relinquish the suffering that was given to you while you were a junior. And so, but these kids don't know that they're actually living out the system of being bullied and then bullying others like they've been bullied, right? So yes, beyond this, things that needs to be done, there needs to be some clear-cut consequences for what should be done when someone is bullied by a fellow student. Clear-cut consequences. The reason why our children would definitely not come to us as parents to say, oh, this is what is happening to me at school, is because then as parents, when you get to the school, you report to the head of school. The head of school called the attention of the so-called child who is the bully, and probably a couple of flogs, right? And that's all. And then the system continues. I get beaten 2 times more than I was for even reporting. And I don't want to speak anymore because it looks like nobody's going to come save me. We need to put in key structures. What happens to a bully and what happens to the bullied? It needs to be clear. When you bully a child, there are a couple of things that happens, right? The child goes into isolation. It affects his or her mental well-being. It affects the way they think. It affects the way they communicate. They begin to isolate themselves. And these kids end up becoming very dangerous individuals as they grow up to become adults. It could be as parents or even in their workplaces where they are also carrying out this act of bullying others, right? So it's very, very important that we put clear-cut consequences for the person that is bullied, that is bullying others. When this is done and when this is carried out to the later, we would see people want to change. So you most likely would keep getting people bullying more students in school because there's nothing that would happen. It might interest you to know that in some schools, you go and report to the principal, and then the principal is saying, oh, it's a normal thing. Even me, I was bullied when I was in school. Please, that's not a big deal. Yes, your senior ate your provision. So what has that done? Are you dead? So it means that we are even fanning the culture of bullying in our school without us knowing, right? And so, that is one clear thing. I personally don't believe that the core lines are enough measures. I also think that there needs to be some sort of structure in terms of what mental well-being for those who have been bullied. Yes, so if I get to report a case to you, what happens next to the person who is a bully? And then what happens to the person who has been bullied? How do we reintegrate them into our system to ensure that they don't have those emotional distress that they would face, those mental issues and challenges that they might face? Most of them will be afraid to even engage in the community at a larger space. For instance, when we got this conversation started, there was even the conversation beyond this happening in school. And so as people keep growing, you see them withholding to themselves, you see them not talking, you see them not engaging more, and you say, oh, I'm just an introvert. They're not introverts. They've passed through a system of bullying where it feels that the only way they can actually survive is keep short, stay calm, come into yourself, stay in your space, so you don't even interact with so many people. So yes, it's one thing to have the lines, but then we need to be clear as to what will happen to the bully, and then what are the measures we are putting in place to ensure that the person who has been bullied feel loved, feel supported, and then they begin to get back into their real self and get into the systems the way it should be. I think that's the way to go. And I also think that in terms of policy implementation, this is something that should cut across the entire length and breadth of the country, right? So this might be, to an extent, carried out in public schools.
Can you hear me?
Okay. But are we really checking this out in the private schools as well?
Hello. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. I didn't want you to go ahead of that part about policy. Before we get there, I actually wanted to maybe ask a few. I wish I could ask you like 1,000 questions before we start talking about the policy aspect. Now, sometimes some persons behave and actually carry out bullying, but they themselves don't know that they are bullying other people. Because in our society, I went to a public school, and the kind of school I went to, if you are not someone, okay, I'm talking about the secondary school. If you are not someone, a grown-up guy that fights, if you're not someone, not only fighting, that wield lethal weapons like knife to threaten your other students, to part away with their possessions, you will not be celebrated. You will be seen, the one who parts with his, his goods is seen as being weak, who cannot stand up for him or herself. And even the teachers and the authorities will see that, okay, yes, this is a norm. You should be able to stand up for yourselves. So in that kind of, in disguised way of promoting bullying, do you think that we need psychiatrists, or the government should not only put on lines, but get psychiatrists to be also teachers in these schools? And how can we bring down this social expectation where everyone thinks, that act of bullying is now being misunderstood as, being a man or being a young boy who is actually, walking in his strength?
Thank you very much. That's a very, very well thought question. I would first of all start with the fact that this has to do with our cultural context, right? I think the first thing to unpack this danger in our current day life is the stigmatization against seeking help. The stigmatization is there, right? Especially for the males, right? When you go out to ask for help, you're looked at somebody that is weak. So the first thing is we need to work against stigmatization. There is nothing wrong with you being a calm person and you don't want to get yourself involved in any negative issues or any mess in school that will get you into trouble. So for instance, I went to a private school in Nigeria, Maduna University, and then, you can understand the context of what it is like. You get expelled for things that you do against fellow students that would kind of like disrupt their learning and affect them. And of course, there's nothing wrong in that context for me to seek help because the school already has a structure where it is clear as to what has to be done. You don't bully your colleagues, you don't do this, you don't do that. There are set rules and regulations, right? So the problem we have, first of all, is a cultural context where we celebrate bullying. The teacher celebrates it, the head of school celebrates it, your fellow classmates celebrates it. They see you as a weakling, that's why you're seeking help. We need to work against that stigmatization and to make everybody understand that no, there's nothing wrong with seeking help. There's nothing wrong with XYZ not wanting to be these group of Hello, can you hear me? 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 Can you hear me?
The conversation that has been put on the table from our interaction with Bright Kemasuode. So it's a two-way traffic. There are those who are bullies and there are those who are being bullied. A number of factors contribute on whichever side of the divide that the child is on. For those who are being bullied, it may seem like the environment aids bullying, whether at home or in the school. And then for those who become bullies, the environment too may also aid them. Let's take the home, for instance. A child that has siblings and is a bully at school, sometimes they start with their siblings at home.
Not at all.
I said sometimes.
You see,
they may start with their siblings at home.
See,
in the way they pass out instructions to other siblings, in the way they act, parents may just feel like that's their personality.
I feel it's a very big issue. I had my children in 2 public schools, and I can tell you how it feels. What you see at home
is different.
It's different completely.
But sometimes it is even seen at home.
No. You see, it is when they get to that point they have become bully, they actually transfer it to the home.
Sometimes it also starts in the home.
No.
I have seen some children in the home setting display tendencies of bullies.
If you do it, the time you are entering SS1, you are bullied. You can't be a bully. Even from
very tender age.
This is what I want you to.
Tendencies.
This is what I want you to understand. At that age, at home, parents are doing all they can to ensure that these children are fine. And when they get to school, they take it. In short, my children used to say they are chesting it and waiting for their time. I remember having to go to a PTA meeting, and I was saying to the vice principal, I leave my child with you. So he can't be chesting everything. He said it's normal. Because the culture in the school is what is encouraging the bully. Sometimes when parents are told that their children bully, they cannot believe their ears. And I remember the last time in one of our private schools, one of the sons that was said to be a bully, if you see this boy on a natural day, you will think he's a saint. He can't hurt a fly, whether at home, whether in church. But in school, is a terror. It's because the environment in school is actually what is creating it. Now, when they get to that class where they are now the bullies, this incident, they can even transfer it to even bully their parents. Because the thing has entered into the blood. And I think it's the school environment that creates these things. Me, I was even thinking that the minister, before thinking of hotlines, the first thing he should do is put cameras on the hostels.
Let's have evidence.
Yes, of course, so that people can see what's happening. Let the whole environment in school, those blind spots where those things happen, then you put the camera so principal can see directly. Or somebody can be appointed who monitors that camera and see this thing happen. So, you see, the porters are there. They pay blind eye to see some of all these things happen. So
it has become normal, so they don't really care.
So putting deterrence in place, like Bryce said, is the starting point, not the hotline. That when it even gets to a virtual where the hotline is, and I hope that when they make that call, that somebody will pick the call eventually, it is to see that there are two things.
I wasn't disagreeing with that. I laughed because sometimes when we put whistleblower mechanisms, we don't also put in a complementary arrangement to ensure that the whistleblower's information is taken up. There are times there is a whistleblower line or even an arrangement. So the whistleblower is then saddled with the responsibility of not just informing or making a report, but is saddled with the burden of providing evidence. Meanwhile, the person or the authority to which you are making the report, they just sit idle and say, this is happening. Okay, send us this, send us this, send us that information. We want audio evidence, we want video evidence. And the question is, you that is in that office, what is your role? What is the response that you are supposed to make when an intelligence information is shared with you? That's one question. I understand that our guest, Bright Kemasuode, is back with us. And then, still on the children at home. Yes, some children may be able to hide it very well from their parents and guardians that they are bullies. But don't you think, or have you seen, where a child is a bully or have the tendencies, but these tendencies have not had the opportunity to be developed, to show up? It's at home. In the way the child relates with other children in the compound or in the neighborhood, in the way the child relates with siblings and even sometimes the parents, you could sense that this child can be a bully. Are there cases like that? Hello, Bright, are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Can you hear me? Like that, really. We can't take away the factor of the family being a place of growth and development, especially for the early stages of a child, right? And so when we talk about the family end, I think people really look at it in the context of you have 3 kids, and then how does one of your child becomes a bully? when you already put in lots of structures in your home and you're doing everything right to ensure that, of course, your home is a safe place for your children. But let's look at it from the context of your home is just one of the homes among other homes in your locality where your children engage, right? So, of course, in my compound currently, I have 4 kids, and then my kids, of course, even discuss with elderly people as young as they are. Good morning, ma'am. How are you? And they have those conversations. And imagine how they engage with their colleague, their age mates when they play outside, right? The kind of things that they do. They're pushing themselves, maybe because a reaction that shouldn't be as a result of something that maybe a little child, let's say Robot, has done something wrong to Bright, and then Bright has to go physical around it. And nobody is correcting. Parents are around, we are watching and say, oh, they are just children, just allow them, they are growing. Of course, that is the way we are modeling that child to become a bully. We didn't correct that child when he did that to Robot. We probably did not correct that child when he did that to a Root, or even did that to Simon. We just felt that it was some stage of development and that we outgrow it. Like you said, those become hidden threats in those children. And then when they get themselves in an environment that aids and abates bullying, they become an actual bully, because then that environment gives them all that they need to be able to thrive as a bully, right? The support is there. And so you see them really living the act of bullying because the environment is there. So like I said before my internet went off, it's really important that we take off that area of stigmatization. It's really affecting us. Let's give room for people to come out and speak when they are bullied. And really, especially in public schools, I don't know what the structure looks like. I went to a public school. It wasn't good. There was nothing you could do for yourself. You literally just have to pray to get to senior secondary school 3 or 2, where it feels like you're on top of the game and you can bully others. That's just what you do. You either survive or you get out of the system, right? So while our private schools might have some structures, the minister needs to, again, come up with those team members and relook some measures. I'm even thinking around educational programs. How are we creating awareness around this? Let's not assume that people know what bully is. Let's assume they don't even know. And we're starting from the basics. We're creating programs that teach students on bully, what this is, what are the impacts, what it can lead to. We're also doing the same awareness program for even educators who are in schools, those that work in the local government sectors, and every aspect, stakeholders, even engaging with parents. And then we move into creating the support system. If Bright is bullied and Bright comes up, how do we support him in a way that Bright will be able to speak tomorrow? Not in a way that it looks as though you are supporting me, but again, it's a shady way. You're just making me feel like I'm weak when I'm supposed to stand up and fight my mates. You're telling me to come and report. And when you do that to me, you victim shame me. I'm not going to come again. The next thing I will do is I try to see if I can fight for myself. And if I can't, I just keep being the one that is going to be bullied all through my stay, right? Then let's also, of course, the third will be community engagement. And this cuts across everybody. Educators, parents, all key stakeholders in the education sector needs to be integrated into a structure that helps solve this. Because whether we like it or not, we are all involved. We are either having the child who is being bullied or our children are the bullies. It's not a spiritual something. There's no spirits out there. These are physical individuals, human beings, children who are not properly trained, or environmental factors that are affecting them, and then they are kind of like at living these negative things that we don't want to see in them. Those are some structures. I think policies and legislation, this is a longer conversation around this, but we must really think about what the consequences are, right? When you do this, this is what you have to pay for doing this, right? And for the other person who is bullied, this is how we need to ensure that this person is better supported, to ensure that they feel free, they want to go to school. At the time, for me, I was not going to school. I mean, my dad is late. He doesn't even know this happens. I and my younger brother would trek from the house like we were going to school, and then we remember that those boys would actually be waiting for us somewhere. And so we decided that, you see, today, we'll just stay on one side of the road and won't go to school. Because if we get to that school, it's going to be crazy. We'll be bullied, and there's no way, except we want to start fighting them. Then a couple of times we reported to my dad, he came to school, but that didn't change much because there are no structures in place against the bully. So it's more or less like your child is weak. That's why your child always comes to report to us on these issues. Why not stand up for himself? No, we don't want people that stand up for themselves and automatically become bullies, because again, you're going to have them as bosses who will be bullying their colleagues at work, who will be bullying their subordinates, who will be bullying their wives or husbands, as the case may be. And then we have a very dysfunctional society. And
hello, Kemasuode. One more. Hello. Yes, thank you very much. Please, whilst we are talking about bullying and why children shouldn't do that, or young boys, including ladies, shouldn't do that, there is something, and I need you to tell me if this is wrong or if it's right. As a father, you give birth to children, young boys and ladies, maybe girls. You expect there's a point in time that these children, of course, are not going to be at home all the time. There's going to be a time where they will be out there in the public without you being there to protect them or to watch over them. And boys need to become boys. Girls will need to become girls. At some point in time in society, they will need to stand up for themselves, to speak for themselves. And I dare hard, and that's why I say I need you to correct me, even when it comes to fisticuff and fighting. In my days, when the fight starts, I run, okay? Now, you don't want your children to just keep running all the time whenever push comes to shove. They are their age mates, and they are going to bully them. And what advice are you going to give? Because if they don't stand up for themselves, like children, they carry that act from when they are teenagers. Then they get to the university, and it continues. Because maybe when they stand up for themselves once, or twice, or 3 times, it will send a message to the one who is carrying the act of bullying to probably maybe retrieve. When do we draw the line? When you need to stand up for yourself and to just chest it or suck it up in and just walk away?
That's a very, very intelligent question. I personally don't believe that it has to be chested in, right? I just believe that a couple of things we need to do is, first of all, not normalize violence. We need to note when we are normalizing violence and where we are not normalizing violence, right? I personally don't believe that a child needs, in standing up as a definition, standing up does not mean going physical. I would see a conscious standing up in this generation to be going mental. How do I know when this is really affecting my academics, is affecting the way I communicate, is affecting the way I see my community, my classroom, my society, and this is the right time to speak up? I would say standing up to be speaking up, reporting of who the bully is, what this person has been doing, and of course, going extra measures to ensure that I get my safety in place. That's what I would see as a good way to stand up. I wouldn't want us to normalize violence as a great way to stand up, because the dangers of that would be we are unconsciously creating a circle of what we are trying to solve. Yes, we want our kids to stand up. If possible, somebody slaps you, and then you slap back to prove that, yes, you shouldn't slap me. There are a couple of things that could happen that I don't think we should even get into in this conversation. Maybe the child that you slapped and you're slapping back has some medical challenges, and that the bully now in this case, who actually had slapped you first, slumps and die. The conversation is going to change. Nobody's going to care if you were bullied. The story changes immediately. So I would want standing up in this generation to be something around mental as against physical. Speaking out clearly, knowing what to do per time, knowing who to go to when you're bullied, having that place where you feel safe at home to be able to talk to your parents that this is what I'm going through, and I don't think I want to continue in XYZ school. That doesn't mean you are weak because you're not fighting back, but then you are a better person, right? Because yes, I would prefer that for my child as against my child going physical. So for instance, I have a 16-year-old, and then we were having conversations recently where she said, see, that there are a couple of guys that keeps following me in this street whenever I go out to buy something. I'm tired. What do I do? And then I was like, unfortunately, as you keep growing up, I won't be able to follow you everywhere because I'm trying to safeguard you. But now let's think of a couple of things we can do. We get you a pepper spray, right? That you can keep close in case if you get into danger. You want us to start thinking about the possibility of learning some karate so that you can also defend yourself. That's like in extreme cases. So the question is, what are we also putting in place for our children as parents? So that when they are bullied in the society, like you said, they're able to stand for themselves. but then not in a violent way. Because when push comes to shove and things change in terms of incidents, right? Like the example I just gave, the story is going to change. It's going to be XYZ slapped a child and the child slumped and died. Nobody's going to be asking, who slapped first? Who was the bully? Oh, he has been doing this in the last 3 years. Those are not going to come into the conversations anymore. So for me, really, I think standing up in this generation should be you really knowing when someone is bullying you and owning up to say, hey, man, that's not how it works here, right? I'm not that kind of person. And something we didn't do in our time in terms of even standing up is, for me, I really did not engage my bully to let them know this is enough. You can't keep doing this to me. I was always running away. So, but just maybe if I had spoken out, right? And maybe not necessarily fighting them. You can't fight a crowd of like 15 boys if you are one or two in the street walking. In a secondary school, I'm looking at a public school context anyway, not necessarily a private school context, right? So I think that's what our definition of standing up should be. Know when this is really affecting you, know when to speak up, know who to go to. In terms of structures in place for our schools, we need to start looking at integrating technology into it. Those areas that look like the blind spots, cameras must be working. Thank God solar seems to be something that is springing up very fast in our society. How are we ensuring that those cameras, those videos are being looked into? For instance, in where I work in the African Leadership University, whenever something goes wrong on campus, all we need to do is go to the technical team, get a video out to check who has gone into that room today, all of the movements that has happened. That's the way to go. It reduces stress. As against probably we would have called us students to say, oh, something got missing today and we are looking for this, we're going to check your hostels. There are better ways to do these things now. I know we might say, oh, in terms of finances, maybe we are not financially buoyant as a nation to invest in that. But then the question is, do we want to have leaders tomorrow who would be bullies? If yes, then of course we don't need to invest in them. If no, then we need to start investing in them. All we are currently experiencing as a nation is because of our foundation, what it was like, what the structures were like, things that we said we didn't have money to put in place, to put in the right structures. And now we're praying about them when we shouldn't be praying about those things.
Again, looking at our society, there's this syndrome they call wait for your turn, which permeates almost every industry, whether it's in the banking, in the police, anywhere you find that, of course, where you have somebody who is at top, always being the one who called the shots, and every other person is asked to wait for their turn. Because what you see really, especially in the public schools, is the fact that those who are bullied are also waiting for the days of their revenge. Outside technology and having people to report to, what kind of conversation should we be having with people at the lower level of school to say in their time we are not going to be bullied? Are there incentives that can be put in place for maybe peer review for those who are seniors who are not bullying, but also checkmating that juniors are not bullied?
That's a very great idea. I mean, it's something I didn't think about when we were having this conversation. It's really important that we put in structures in place that applaud those who are not bullying, right? That's also a way to kind of like stop this, right? I mean, beyond technology and all of those conversations around reporting and that, right? We need to come down to the grassroots, student to student. Like I said, we need to start having workshops even for our students. And this should not be a workshop where we actually have Bright coming from XYZ location to come talk to students. This should be workshops. This should be engagements happening across different schools where it is students themselves who have been able to find out what the impact of bully is. I mean, through examples, we have a couple of them that's happening in our society, even in our nation, Nigeria. And then we have these kids coming to school to share this across with their classmates, with their colleagues, putting in some very low-based structures that, again, when you check on this, it's not really cost effective, right? You're having an anti-bully day or an anti-bully week where you have students on day one of that week, students of your own schools. Imagine we're having an anti-bully week, and then you have students who are actually bully but participating in an anti-bully walk in XYZ city, right? Imagine how it looks. You slowly changing their mindset, because we also want to think around how the attitude of bully is also a part of your mind the way you think, the way you do things, and what you see from what you do. You might not see it as being that you're bullying, but the truth is that's what you're doing. And so imagine a bully participating in a walk against bully. That's day one. We have taken a stroll. Let's take, for instance, let us say that I stay. We've taken a stroll around the city of Warri. And then, yeah, we're all excited. We're sharing about how our experience went. That was day one. Day two, we bring in, of course, like we're having now in this show, individuals who can really tell what the negative impacts are on bully and what it has led to. What are the statistics? How many deaths have we seen in Nigeria and in other places? How has this impacted even the nation in terms of economy, right? And then we're having this conversation in schools where we have our students seated. And then we're moving to day three. I think all of this needs to bring some sort of creativity. Teachers going out of their way to be creative. There are no one ways to solving these problems, really.
Let's look at this report system now that is being created by the Ministry of Education. So there are hotlines through which students and parents and teachers, school authorities can report bullying. What do you expect to be the follow-up action when bullying is reported? For some schools, it's outright expulsion when investigations are done. But is it enough to push the child who is the bully out of the system?
So that's where we really need to look at structures around this. Like I said, consequences, right? There's something called a first-time offender, right? And then, of course, somebody who's been doing this over and again. We also want to be able to keep track of students in our school. When Bright is moving from XYZ public school to XYZ public school, regardless, where is Bright coming from? What is Bright like in the school that he was in the last 3 years? Why is Bright probably leaving? We need to do our work in a proper way to be able to ascertain that, Bright needs to change school because his parents and family has changed location. And again, even if Bright is actually changing school because he's a bully, for instance, do we as an institution where he's coming to has a structure in place to be able to support him? Because you made a very great point. Yes, XYZ student is a bully. We expel him from bullying for bullying other students. I mean, parents would say, thank God, this person has finally left. My child will not be free. But then what happens to that child who has been expelled? Does that change him or that makes him a worse individual? It's something we want to think. So I'm really thinking of a structure where expulsion is important, but at what stage would that happen? Right? For first offenders, what are we doing? Is it suspension? And even beyond suspension, how do you imbibe some level of consequence that students really feel what they've done and then they are really sober for it? When I was in public school, in terms of working in the primary and then secondary school, and building consequences in my class, ensuring that my class has a proper well-being environment, one of my consequences is I take away from a child what they love. I don't assume that you need to tell the child to kneel down. That's not going to work. I say a child that loves sports, and when he or she does something negative, we take away sports from that child, right? And then you see how that child feels the remorse because this is something he or she loves. So this is something that we need to put our all in as teachers, as principals. I mean, as you were asking that question, I was wondering, why is a principal of a school picking up a mobile phone to call the hotlines of the Federal Ministry of Education? Does it mean that the principal could not put in some structures in place in his or her own school? I think going to the Federal Ministry of Education or the hotline would be at really high level of bullying. Maybe something really serious has happened, and then, of course, we'll need their intervention. But then, if I'm the minister, that's a question I was going to ask. So, Mr. Eze, who is the principal of SYZ school, what were the structures you put in place to stop this in the first place, even before calling our hotlines? I think the hotlines will better be suited for students who are being bullied, maybe parents who want to take it to an higher level than educators themselves, right? I would rather prefer educators themselves reworking their classroom, engaging with their children, students, to make them understand, pupils, what the impact of this is, right? And then we keep cascading this at a scale level where it becomes like a public conversation where people really see that bullying is not a way to go, and then everybody is involved in working against this. Not also to shame the bullied, but to help them. Some of the things that could also lead to someone being a bully is seeking attention. They want to be noticed. They want to be known. Psychologically, we are going back to the conversation. Why is this child always doing the negative things to be noticed? And because they want to be known. Could it be that back home in the family there's no love? Could it be that in the society where they are growing is a very distorted environment where you have adults smoking, a lot of things happening, and then they just need a place that is sane. And it seems like the school environment is a place that is a bit sane, but I need more attention to be able to make me develop into a better human being. And so I need to be a bully. There are questions we need to ask, right? We need to get in psychology into this, psychologists into this. I think that was a question that came earlier in the conversation. I'm personally thinking if you're not going to employ their services in our schools, then that is going to be some sort of professional development programs that should be in place for our educators. At what level do you need to go for this? At what time do you need to go for this? So there are a lot of conversation around this. And of course, it's not like if we put all of this in place today, things are going to change right away. But the truth is, we would have moved from where we are currently to a place where parents will be confident enough to say, if my child is in XYZ public school, I am sure he or she is safe.
Oh, do you think having a department manned by psychologists in school really doing guidance and counseling? Because what we see today in most schools, guidance and counseling is all about what career children can follow. Will it be of help if we'll have psychologists actually in school who can actually help deprogram the mind of some of these bullies?
Yes, that's a very great question. I think we need to rethink what guidance and counseling is in our public schools, right? This is the time where we need to rethink it. It goes beyond career sets. There's a conversation about the future of work, where even teachers in schools are teaching kids for jobs that will be existing in the next 5-10 years that we don't even know what those jobs will be called, right? So it means that cuts across all departments. In all honesty, I don't think that guidance and counseling is even the way it used to be when we were in school and even the older generations. Yes, it was more around career then, but I think it has really been watered down even in recent times. So we need to revisit guidance and counseling. We need to structure it in a way that it caters for all of these needs, right? The needs of when you are being bullied, the needs of sexual violence. It needs to be a robust department that sits in issues like this, right? So when we're even looking at maybe a disciplinary department, I would think that would be the right place, because first of all, even if we are going to expel you, there needs to be somebody who is going to talk to you to make you understand what you have done. You need to first of all understand what you have done, the impact of what you have done, and why we are taking this decision against you. And if you should even think that we shouldn't take this decision, is there something we should do differently that would better? So we need to rework that system. I think that this is a call to the Federal Ministry of Education, and I think education authority across Africa, that we need to start beginning to think around doing our education to suit us. There's something we call doing by learning in the African Leadership University, where our students, even at first year, are already experiencing internship opportunities. These individuals are already working while they are first year students. So by the time they are graduating from the university, most of them have at least a year and a half work experience. Imagine what that does to them, right? So there needs to be an overhauling. We need to think of an education system where we are creating it to suit our need as a people.
Yeah, thank you very much. I actually just want to ask two questions, and I hope you can do justice to it in a very short period of time. I want to know if bullying is what, metamorphosis into cultism in a higher institution, and I also want to know if bullying exists in the place of work.
Those are very interesting questions. So, first answers, like you said, I think we're having limited time. Of course, bullying metamorphosis, and then so because I'm seeking safety, right? I need to go to a place where I would be able to be safe. So definitely, people would get themselves involved in cultic activities, even in secondary school. So as you ask that question, I'm kind of like reflecting back to my days in secondary school. I mean, It might not necessarily be a name of a cult per se, but then you have this group of guys working together, and then you give them their space. They are bullying you, you don't mind, because if you get into their space, you're going to be in trouble. It does metamorphose into cultism. There's no two ways about it, because you need to keep growing in that attitude of bullying. It's something that now gives you some sort of pleasure, seeing people in pain, seeing that you are in a place of authority above people, and not just people, your age mates. So that gives them some sort of like happiness, right? Not really understanding the negative impact that might be on the person that's being bullied. So definitely, that's what is skyrocketing the need for cultism in school, even for the bullied. Because then the question is, if James, who bullied me, is a member of a cult, and me, I am not a cult, maybe that's why I'm being bullied. Does it mean I should go and join a cult? So that's a question that runs through the mind of a child. They wouldn't want to go back home to have that conversation with their parents. And yes, maybe after having conversations with their friends, they're like, oh, we need to be safe on campus. So the earlier we join XYZ group, the better for us. We cannot keep being the ones that are being bullied all the time, right? And of course, that person also graduates from the institution. And your question is, are we going to see that in the workplace? We're certainly going to see that in the workplace, because the person has lived this life for a long time, right? It has become a part of him or a part of her. They've been bullying people from when they were in high school to their university days. And of course, now that they are working, it might not be structured as bully, but you see the way they handle things with their subordinates. You see how distorted and dysfunctional the department is, because XYZ is heading the department. They are bullied, right? There might be different names for them if you want to look at it from the HRO perspective. But the truth is, this is something that has grown in that person's life. And that's the more reason why we need to take a stop and know that this is not just about the bullied alone. It's also about the bully. How do we ensure that we are able to create a system that helps both individuals, so they don't get to a situation in life where it is affecting both parties and they become individuals that they shouldn't be, or it's also limiting them from becoming what they ought to have been if they didn't have to pass through that part of bullying and being the bully.
As a parent, are there signs you should watch out for in your child to know that the child is being bullied, or perhaps there may be some problems in schools? Because we've seen cases where it became a very sad situation and there was no remedy for the child until the life of the child was lost. That was when the parents got to know that the child was being bullied. Some will say, I don't want to go to school, and parents say, you have to go to school. So what are the signs to look out for so that parents can pay close attention to their children just in case they are being bullied? And what should be the follow-up action?
There are different signs that you can look at for, right? Ranging from, of course, depression, low self-esteem, especially for low self-esteem. If you have a child who is more outspoken and then you see them retracting, you know there's something wrong somewhere. You see emotional distress. You said it all yourself. The kids don't want to go to school. There's a disengagement from schooling. They are fine, but this morning they just act like they are sick. There's always an excuse for not wanting to go to school. Today they come up with some excuse, tomorrow a different excuse. You also see isolation as something that comes into place. Even at home, that child begin to withdraw to themselves. They don't engage with their siblings. They don't engage very well with you as a parent, right? So I'll just take it back again. You see isolation. You see this engagement from school. They don't want to get involved in school activities. They give you stories for why they should not be in school. Most importantly, you see reduced academic performance. Because if that child is not wanting to go to school, the child doesn't feel safe in school, there's no way they can perform academically. While they are in school, they are conscious. They are thinking of what way to take home after school close, or where to pass to the hostel so that they won't be bullied, or what to do. How do they navigate that challenge? So that different things you would see. It's written there. The problem we also have now in our society is because we are also very busy, we want to make lots of money to be able to take care of our children, which is, of course, a needed thing. We need to get them the right education. We need to provide their needs. But then we also need to begin to pay attention as parents, because the signs will be there. You would see when your child doesn't speak. You would see when they are isolating themselves. You would see from their conversation about their school environment. You would see from even the kind of conversations they have with you, the kind of things they say. You would see it from stress written on them. You will see it from the academic performance. When you see these things, you need to take some steps back and really evaluate your child. Talk to them, engage with them, and get to know exactly what is happening in their lives. It might not be bullying, but these are some things that I know you would see when a child is being bullied. Yeah, so these are things parents should look out for and begin to act fast.
Right. I want to also ask about the child who is a bully. Can a bully be radicalized? Where sometimes when you've talked about reasons why a child may become bullied, maybe a child lacks love or all of that. But if a child has been expelled from school and back home, maybe the parents change the school, is there a way to change a bully?
So first step to change a bully is accepting that you're a bully. Also for parents, accepting that your child is a bully. So there's something we do around clogging all of these things. Your child is a bully, but you said, no, it's a negative term. I'm not going to use that on my child. The step of changing that narrative for your child is, first of all, knowing that my child is a bully. These are the signs showing. What can I do to support my child to become a better individual? It's a support from the home. Truth is, your child, you can change your child to 10, 15, 20 schools, right? Don't forget, you get to school at 8 a.m. and then all of the whole class activities happen, and by 2 we are done. And the child has to come back home. For a child who is not in boarding school anyway, those child have more time with their parents at home, right? So we want this. I'm looking at a situation where parents really need to sit up. As for the bully, when you know your child is a bully, it's now your responsibility. You're talking to your child. You are making him or her know why that is not what they should do. You are explaining to them why they shouldn't do that. You are also going the extra mile to getting medical attention. You want to call it attention from psychologists, right? I mean, I agree with you on that. If they need any sort of engagement at that level with somebody in the medical profession, who is going to provide it? Definitely not the Minister of Education, the parents. So when you know that your child is a bully and you want to redeem that child, that's when the parents need to sit up, right? You need to have engagements with that child. You need to put in support measures. I mean, as Christians, yes, very good. The spiritual aspect, you should pray, no doubt. But then, what about some other measures, the psychological side of things, and other things need to put in place as parents? Show them love. We know this is what you're currently going through. We know you were pushed out of that school because of this attitude. I am here for you. I'm your dad. I'm your mom. And we can walk through this together. Is there anything you think we can do? Sometimes when you start engaging with those children, you break them down, right? And then you hear them speak up. For some of them who want to be honest, that's when they even come up to say, you don't have our time. You've never been there. You begin to hear things and then you help retrace the child's step back, right? So, of course, at that point in time, in terms of redemption, it's not the public. The public won't do it for you. The Minister of Education won't do it for you with instructions. It has to go back to the home, the basic place of development, where everything is starting in terms of a child's development for the mom, for the dad. And just to say, please, it's not the duty of mothers, so it's the duty of parents. I know there will be that push. Now you're picking. We do that always in Africa, where when the child is great, it's probably the dad's child. When the child is bad, of course, it's the mom's child and all of those things. But at that point in time, we're bringing in our efforts as parents to support that child. And if you do that, the child feels love. Definitely. We were all born empty. Whatever it is that we are doing now, as an attitude, as a behavior, are things we learned here. From our environment, from the communications that we have with people, from the movies that we watch, from the books that we read, from the songs that we listen to, right? So those are what I think we should do to turn things around for our children.
Thank you so much, Bright Kemasuode, Alumni Parents Engagement Lead, African Leadership University, African Leadership College of Higher Education. We've been talking about bullying in schools. What makes a bully and why do children get bullied? What is the way out of it? All of these areas we've touched on today. If you have a child who you know is a bully, there are steps to which you can reclaim that child and make him or her change his ways. And for the hotline, I think more should be done to ensure that it's not just an information dump or an intelligence sharing platform where there are no follow-up action to provide both the bullied and the bully some psychological support and every support they need to become better people. Thank you for being our guest.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.